Welcome to Logan's Comics, where heroes rise, scars tell their stories, and the smallest sparks often burn the brightest. There's a certain kind of quiet bravery in the Marvel universe that often goes unnoticed. The kind that doesn't come wrapped in cosmic fire, thunderous power, or a legacy dripping with ancient prophecy. Sometimes it comes from a kid who never asked to be different, never asked to stand out, and never asked to carry the weight of survival on his shoulders, but chose to rise anyway. And in the case of Victor Borkowski, the mutant known as Anole, that quiet bravery becomes something extraordinary. His story doesn't begin with a grand tragedy or an apocalyptic revelation. It begins in a small, conservative town in North Carolina, one of those places where neighbors wave from their porches, where everybody knows each other's business, and where differences echo a little louder than they should. Victor grew up knowing that he wasn't like everyone else. His green skin, scales, and reptilian features made him an easy target long before his mutation truly manifested. But the thing about Victor was that he never shrank away from anyone's judgment. Instead, he learned early on that he had a choice: hide who he was or embrace it boldly, and he chose the latter. His parents, unlike so many tragic Marvel families, were loving, supportive, and fiercely protective of their son. They understood the cruelty of the world long before Victor did, and they taught him the courage to face it. And it was because of that love that they made one of the hardest decisions any parents could, sending him to the Xavier Institute, where he could find a future instead of fear. If the world wasn't ready for him yet, they believed Xavier's school would be. Victor arrived at the institute with the awkwardness of any teenager, but also with a spark of possibility. He wasn't here to be a star or a prodigy or a savior. He was here to find people who wouldn't look at him and see a monster. And for the first time in his life, he was the green kid. He was Victor, a mutant among mutants, surrounded by others who understood. His early days at the institute were filled with uncertainty. He wasn't sure where he fit in. He wasn't sure who he was, but Xavier's gave him something invaluable: room to grow. And slowly his natural charisma, warmth, and emotional intelligence began to shine. He wasn't the loudest person in the room, but he was often the heart of it. And then came the war. One of the many in the never-ending cycle of mutant conflict. It was the kind that demanded sacrifice before strategy, the kind where students were suddenly forced to confront the brutal reality of what it meant to be born different in a world that feared mutants. When tragedy struck, when the Institute needed leaders more than students, Victor gave more than anyone should ever have to. He lost his arm, torn away in battle in a moment that would have broken many others, but Victor was no ordinary kid. He was resilient in every sense of the word. His mutation allowed him to regenerate, and when his arm grew back, it grew back stronger, more reptilian, more alien than before. And here's the thing: he didn't flinch, he didn't recoil, he didn't wish it away. He looked at this new part of himself, this reminder of the violence he endured, and accepted it. That choice, that acceptance, became the foundation of who Anole would become. Every generation of mutants has that one student who surprises everyone, the one who steps up not because they want glory, but because it's the right thing to do. For the generation of young mutants who followed the era of the X-Men's greatest losses, Victor became that student. His powers evolved along with his courage: superhuman agility, wall crawling, a prehensile tongue, camouflage that could render him nearly invisible, regeneration that bordered on miraculous. But his greatest gift was his heart. Unlike some mutants who saw themselves as weapons, Victor understood the emotional cost of conflict better than most adults. And that understanding made him a natural leader long before anyone formally recognized it. But leadership is lonely, especially for a kid already carrying the weight of feeling different within a community of outcasts. Victor grappled with insecurities he rarely voiced. His appearance became increasingly reptilian over time, and even within the mutant community that wasn't always easy. Yet he kept showing up. He kept pushing forward. He kept being the person others could turn to. He was also one of the few young mutants unafraid to accept his identity entirely. He was openly gay, and he never treated it as a secret or a confession. It was simply part of him, as natural as his scales or his courage. In a world where mutants already faced discrimination, Victor chose to live his truth twice over. That's not just bravery, that's heroism. And inevitably, that quiet heroism began to stand out. Victor found himself leading squads, making tactical decisions, and holding his ground in battles far too large for someone his age. But he never let responsibility harden him. He never stopped caring, listening, supporting. His empathy was his anchor, and that anchor kept others from drifting when the storm came. Mutant history is full of war and loss, and Victor saw more of it than most students. Each conflict chipped away at the innocence he once had, but it never stole his hope. He fought alongside legends, survived against impossible odds, and returned to the school time and again because he believed the next generation deserved a chance he barely had. But his journey wasn't defined only by survival. It was about identity, who he was, who he wanted to be, and who he refused to become. And one of the hardest lessons Victor learned was realizing that heroism isn't a destination. It's a choice. A choice you make every day, sometimes in silence, sometimes without applause. And as he grew older, the world around him changed. New threats emerged. Old conflicts reignited. The line between student and soldier blurred. But Anole adapted. He always adapted. It's what reptiles do, and Victor made evolution look like defiance. Victor's evolution wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Every scar carved a new path forward. Every loss shaped a new strength. His scales hardened, but his heart never did. And that balance, that impossible blend of resilience and compassion, made Anole one of the most unique young heroes the X-Men ever trained. As he stepped deeper into the world of mutant conflict, he found himself caught in the delicate web between adolescence and responsibility. There were days when he yearned to be just a normal teenager, to hang out without worrying about the next sentinel attack, to laugh without glancing over his shoulder, to belong without the weight of destiny pressing down on him. But mutants rarely get to choose the pace of their lives. The world chooses it for them. And Victor responded not with bitterness, but with courage. He learned to disguise fear with humor. He learned to camouflage not just his body, but his insecurities. He became the friend others relied on, the one who would walk into the danger first, if it meant someone else didn't have to. Not because he believed he was invincible, but because he understood the cost of losing those you care about. There was a moment quiet, almost too small to notice, when Victor realized he was no longer the scared kid who arrived at the institute with wide eyes and trembling hands. He had become someone others looked up to, someone others followed, someone others believed in. And that realization came with its own kind of fear. Leadership doesn't wait for permission. It arrives when the world is at its worst. And Victor, despite everything, rose to meet that call. His friendships became his foundation, especially those forged in battle, in trauma, in shared survival. He was part of a generation marked by conflict, a generation forced to grow up too quickly, and yet he always found moments to breathe, moments to laugh, moments to remind others that the fight wasn't everything. In the hallways of the school, in the quiet corners between missions, Victor's presence was a kind of emotional glue. He brought people together simply by being himself. And yet even heroes feel lost. There were times when Victor questioned his place among the X-Men, times when he wondered if he was strong enough, brave enough, or mutant enough to carry the legacy of those who came before him. He wasn't a powerhouse like Colossus. He wasn't a prodigy like Storm. He wasn't a legend like Cyclops. But what Victor didn't yet understand was that the X-Men never needed another giant, another prodigy, another myth. They needed him. His greatest battles were never with villains, but with doubt, with the quiet fear that he didn't deserve the trust placed in him, with the haunting feeling that he was still that kid hiding behind a smile. But each mission, each challenge, each moment of truth chipped away at those doubts. And then came the turning point. The moment when Victor stopped trying to live up to anyone else's idea of a hero and embraced the truth of what he already was. It didn't come with applause. It didn't come with spectacle. It came in the form of responsibility, real responsibility, the kind that forces you to step into a role whether you're ready or not. When danger struck the institute, when students panicked, when chaos erupted, it was Victor who stepped forward. Not because he was ordered to, not because he wanted praise, but because someone had to. He barked orders with a firmness no one expected. He coordinated defenses. He protected the younger students like a big brother who refused to lose even one of them. He moved with focus, with purpose, with instinct. And afterward, when the crisis passed, the looks on the faces of those around him told the story clearly. Victor wasn't just another student anymore. He was a leader. But leadership doesn't mean perfection, and Victor knew that better than most. He struggled with guilt, the kind that creeps in after battles, whispering that you could have done more, saved more, been more. And when you're young, that guilt can be suffocating. Victor didn't run from it. He faced it head-on. He talked to mentors. He leaned on friends. He opened his heart even when it hurt. That vulnerability became his greatest strength. Because in a world where everyone tries to look unbreakable, Victor showed that you could be strong and still feel deeply. And somewhere along the way, amid the missions and the chaos and the trauma that often defines mutant youth, Victor found something rare: hope. Not naive optimism, but grounded hope, the kind you cling to because you've seen darkness and know the value of light. His powers grew alongside that hope. His agility sharpened. His reflexes became almost supernatural. His camouflage ability evolved into near invisibility. His regeneration became faster, stronger, almost frightening in its efficiency. He became a combatant capable of facing threats far beyond what most believed possible. But he never let his abilities define him. To Victor, powers were tools, not identity. What defined him was choice. He chose kindness in a world that rewarded cruelty. He chose honesty in a world that punished difference. He chose love in a world built on division. He chose to keep going even when the universe kept trying to break him. And as the mutant world expanded, as Krakoa rose, as new alliances formed, as old wounds reopened, Victor stepped into a new era with the same determination he showed since childhood. As part of the new mutant generation, he became something more than a student, more than a soldier. He became a symbol of what mutants could be when they embraced every part of themselves, even the parts they were once told to hide. He wasn't a chosen one. He wasn't destined for greatness. He wasn't born into legend. He built himself scale by scale, choice by choice, heartbreak by heartbreak. And that is what makes his story extraordinary. There's a moment in every hero's life when the world stops seeing them as a trainee and starts seeing them for what they truly are. For Anole, that moment didn't come with a medal or a ceremony. It came in the middle of chaos with smoke choking the air, alarms screaming through metal corridors, and lives hanging by a thread. That's when Victor realized that he had become the person he once looked for: the steady hand in a storm, the voice that cut through panic, the heart that refused to break. And yet, even as he adapted to that role, he never forgot the kid he used to be. The boy from North Carolina who just wanted a place to belong. Because that boy is why he fights. That boy is why he stands tall even when the world tries to knock him down. That boy is why he refuses to let anyone, human or mutant, feel alone the way he once did. But no journey is without shadows. There were times when Victor feared what he was becoming. Each regeneration, each evolution pushed him further into a form that some might call monstrous. His scaled arm, his sharp claws, the reptilian texture spreading across his body. He looked in the mirror and sometimes struggled to recognize himself. And if there's one thing mutants understand too well, it's the terror of transformation, the fear that one day you'll wake up and lose the last piece of yourself. Victor confronted that fear in the only way he knew how: by embracing it. He learned to see beauty in the parts of himself that others might misunderstand. He learned that identity isn't about appearance, it's about intent, about heart, about the choices you make when no one's watching. And he realized that his transformation wasn't a curse. It was evolution. It was survival. It was the universe telling him that he was strong enough to endure what others couldn't. Growth hurts. Transformation scars. Evolution demands courage. And Victor had more courage than he ever gave himself credit for. In time, his role expanded beyond the walls of the school. He ventured into missions once reserved for veteran X-Men. He worked alongside warriors who shaped the mutant world long before he was born. And with every mission, every battle, every impossible choice, Anole earned his place among them. One of his defining traits, something those who fight beside him praise more than his powers, is his ability to care even in the heat of conflict. When others think about the mission, Victor thinks about the people in it. He notices who's afraid, who's hurt, who's losing hope. And he acts, not after the danger passes, during it. That compassion, that instinctive understanding of human emotion makes him more than a fighter. It makes him a guardian. There's a particular kind of strength in empathy. It's easy to run into battle when adrenaline is high. It's harder to kneel beside someone trembling after the fight, place a scaled hand on their shoulder, and make them feel safe again. Victor does that without being asked, without expecting anything in return, because he remembers what it felt like to be scared and alone, and he refuses to let anyone feel that on his watch. As new eras unfolded, including the rise of Krakoa, Anole found himself surrounded by possibilities once unimaginable. A mutant nation. A world where mutants weren't merely surviving but thriving. A society where identity wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. For Victor, that wasn't just a political shift, it was personal. Krakoa wasn't simply a home. It was a validation. Proof that the world could change, evolve, rebuild. Proof that someone like him, the boy once whispered about, stared at, judged, belonged to a future filled with potential. Victor's generation became essential in this new age, not because they were the strongest, but because they had lived through an era defined by tragedy. They understood the cost of peace. They understood the fragility of hope. They were the bridge between the old scars and the new dreams. And Anole, quietly, steadily, became one of the hearts of that bridge. He trained new mutants. He supported old friends. He stood on front lines when needed. And he navigated the delicate balance between personal identity and collective responsibility, with a maturity that surprised even the most seasoned X-Men. But what makes Victor's story truly powerful is that he never let heroism swallow him whole. He still laughed, he still learned, he still loved. He still allowed himself moments of vulnerability, moments of doubt, moments of joy. Too many young heroes burn out before they ever get the chance to grow up. Victor refused to let the world take that from him. And as the battles grew larger, as the future of mutant kind shifted again and again, Victor's resolve hardened. He wasn't a background character. He wasn't a footnote in mutant history. He wasn't just part of the crowd. He was Victor Borkowski, Anole, a hero shaped not by destiny but by choice. A hero who proved that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks softly, it comforts, it heals, it endures. A hero who proved that being different isn't a weakness, it's a superpower. A hero who proved that evolution isn't just physical, it's emotional, spiritual, human. And somewhere out there, in a small town in North Carolina, there's a house where a set of parents once wondered if their son would ever find a place in the world. Today, they would see him standing on the front lines of a new age, not hiding, not apologizing, not shrinking, but shining with the confidence of someone who knows exactly who he is. He is a leader. He is a symbol. He is an X-Man in the making. And in the grand tapestry of Marvel's mutant saga, he is one of the brightest threads weaving the future. Because sometimes, the heroes who begin as outcasts become the ones who guide us all. And Anole. He is proof that courage can grow anywhere, even from the smallest spark.